Hey friends, so one of the questions I always get is why do I want to create content that is this way? What's my obsession with the narcissist? And I guess the best way to answer that is to really just kind of give you an introduction of who I am and what I've been through. Okay, for those of you that are just tuning in, my name is Chaplain Dallas. I am a post-traumatic stress disorder survivor as well as a narcissistic abuse survivor. And my purpose on this channel is to really kind of just share my experiences and my knowledge with others. One of the biggest things when I first learned about narcissism and narcissistic abuse was having the resources of my peers, of others that have been through it, either through blogs, Reddit forums, uh, YouTube videos just like this, um, and as many other resources as I can, because the problem with it is that narcissism, especially from a male perspective, is very rarely ever discussed openly. It's one of those things where it's become more popular lately, and people are starting to recognize it. But for the most part, it is one of those things where, because it is very hard to diagnose somebody as having NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and because our scientific community, or society, I should say, really has a hard time acknowledging it, because honestly, they openly celebrate these people. So let me share my journey. Let me share my story with you and tell you how I kind of got wrapped up in all of this. Um, I want to start by saying that I've been a very strong person most of my entire life, a very strong-willed person. I've had my own ideas. I've had my own things to do. I've lived a very full life. I'm a veteran, a combat Navy veteran, which is how I acquired some PTSD that would eventually lead to a suicide attempt, in which, by the grace of God, I have overcome that part of it for the most part. I still have moments, but I know how to manage it now. And this is all done without chemicals. This is without doing. I mean, there are certain things that you do that kind of keep yourself aligned to keep yourself. But yes, so I have always been a very strong-willed person, enough to even start pulling myself out there now. Um, the Bible says that we should confess and share our stories. Okay, that we should confess our sins and that we should share our stories with others, so that others can learn from it, and so it's pretty much the part of being a disciple of Christ. He says take your experiences in me and move them and teach the people. He commissioned people um, to do that. And so it is my, not only just my opportunity, but my pleasure to really share these experiences with others, to help them get through. And so if you're somebody that is going through a narcissistic abuse, this is a good place for you to be. It's a safe place. I am a Christian. I came to my walk in faith after my depression, after my episode with suicide, and I probably would not be here today without the divine intervention of God. I wouldn't be here without it. But let's talk about my episode with my narcissistic wife. So, knowing this all about me that I've just said, I met my um, perfect spouse at church, at a church function, at a church leadership function. I met my spouse. I was just coming out of a very rigid divorce. Uh, I was just out of a very rigid. In fact, I was fresh out of it, and so meeting this other person was like a godsend to me because I had been dislocated from my previous marriage for years. We were separated for years, and meeting this person who turned out to be a narcissist, but we'll get to that here in a little bit, was a godsend. She was walking a walk of faith, so I thought. She was a on fire for with her faith, as I thought, and we shared a great deal of commonalities, an incredible amount of commonalities. Okay, this was the love bombing stage. I didn't think about it until I started learning more about narcissistic tendencies and narcissistic abuse to realize that this was her love bombing me. Okay, she was perfect. She was beautiful. She was by far the most beautiful woman I'd ever been with. And she was adventurous. She had all these traits and she was faithful. So she seemed faithful. These are all traits that were just resonated with me. And I was like, I need to be with this person. I even prayed to God and was praying like, okay, is this the person for me? And I'll have another video about that some other time. But all things pointed to her being the one. Now, we had a short courtship period. We dated for a few months. We were actually long distance dating. We were together. We were together calling on the phone, and there were red flags in there that she was a narcissist that I was unaware of. Like constantly calling and texting and wanting to know where I'm at, what I'm doing, my every bit. She plays it off as just wanting to be part of my life and knowing about my life. And being that we were long distance, I understand her concern with that. So I ignored that red flag. But there was also another red flag that I ignored. And that's when anything got very difficult, when we started talking about very difficult subjects, things that maybe she didn't want to expose, things that would make us closer, that would bring us closer, she would step away and start discarding. In fact, we moved, we moved in together about 4 months after we were long distance dating, long distance relationship. She moved into my place, and on the very first day, now mind you, I had flown out to where she was from, on the other side of the country. She loaded up her things. She had quit her job that she was ready to move on from, and relocated to me because I had some things that were still going on in my life that I just couldn't drop. Okay, I couldn't just drop them and move with her. it was far better for her to just move to me, which she agreed upon. And the very first day, she starts a fight. Very first day. She's wanting to take control over everything in this and the place that I'd been living in for 3 years. Everything. She started already with the devaluing. Like she didn't, I had been living in this place for 3 years. It wasn't. I'm a pretty clean and meticulous person in that way. I'm a tidy person, I should say. I'm not a clean freak, but I'm a tidy person. And so she continued to just berate that, like, oh, I'm not. You call this place clean and blah 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 and all this. Really, what it was is these were just control moves. Again, red flags that I didn't see. But the worst of it all was when it was time to, when things got difficult and we were at a point of challenging each other and learning from these challenges, mind you, she would be quick to say, forget it. I'm done. I'm out. I want to go. I'm out. And I would have to talk her back into it. I would have to say, okay, listen, that's an irrational decision. I really think we need to work on some things and so on and so forth. But her initial reaction was always to leave as soon as it got bad, to discard. And so, and her first day here was no different. Her first day when she moved in, she threatened to not even unpack her car and turn around and drive back to where she was at by herself. Like she was like, I'll just take my things and go. Again, irrational, throwing out threats. All red flags that I should have not ignored, but I did, because I really believed that this woman was for me, that she was, that we were meant to be together. Another month or so goes by, and we decide to get married, and we get married, and we go to the courthouse and do all that stuff, and then we had a nice little wedding ceremony. Of course, it wasn't good enough for her. More red flags. She wanted a big ceremony with lots of people and all of this, and neither one of us could afford it, and nor did this was my this would have been my my third marriage, her second, and she would have been very for me it was more about us, and I chose to just say, let's get married, have my parents were there as witnesses. And it was a lovely ceremony. But prior to doing that, of course, she gets cold feet, and she's about ready to call it off. Again, another red flag. I have to calm her down, say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to make it work. And so we went through with it. Now, over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, it never got better. It never got better. We peaked out before we even got started. Okay. And I'm not saying that it's all her fault. I made mistakes too. I wasn't sure how to deal with this. Okay, and this is the effect that narcissism has. But I started to notice that she was very selfish. She was very self-centered. Like she didn't make any decisions, and I'm talking like major decisions that didn't affect her. Like if I wanted her to make a decision or help me make the decision, give me the input on something, she wanted no part of it, because she wanted no accountability for it if it went wrong. Okay? She wanted no accountability for any of it. Okay? If something went wrong, it was because of a decision that I made. It was that was maybe based even on because I always asked for her input, I always asked for communication, and I always prided myself on being as honest as I could be with her. Okay, unfortunately, she wasn't being honest with me because she's a narcissist. She would manipulate the truth. So I wouldn't say that she outright was a liar, but she would take the truth and only really kind of make it a half truth and then fill in the rest. And I have a video about that as well, about how the narcissist takes a half truth and then fills in the rest with their truth. And it just continued on to be very dysfunctional. We had separated. I separated from her. I went to go live at my workplace. This was just before the pandemic. She had, we had gotten into a fight and she said, just get out. And I had gotten so tired of hearing about that, hearing her say, just get out, leave, I'm done, that I just left. I packed up as much as I could and left. And she, of course, acted very irresponsibility. She already had a new supply at that point, which, by the way, she doesn't stay in contact with that new supply. She burnt that supply. You know, it was supposedly her best friend, somebody who she'd been talking to, somebody that she admired. She wanted to be that person. And so she leaned on that person and then stayed at and decided she was going to stay at their house, even though we had already had an agreement that she was going to stay in the townhouse that we were renting at the time together, and I was going to move away and figure something out for myself. And during that time, when we were separated, I made some mistakes as well. I'm not proud of it, but I made my own mistakes. Unfortunately, when you make a mistake with a narcissist, even if you repent, even if you ask for forgiveness, which I did both, and I learned from that lesson, and I won't make that mistake again, even though all of that is true, didn't matter. That mistake was now written and who she was trying to make me out to be, because you see, she's a narcissist and she's had this happen before to her, and this is the cycle that she's used to, and so she knows that she needs an out when she needs it, and that's why she did that. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of breaking no contact and getting back together with her. The abuse continued. And so in this is where I say, and there's another couple years in which we were on again, off again, and incidences where, as I'm learning more about narcissism and learning more about narcissistic abuse, I'm seeing all of these red flags just flying. But I was already attached. She had already done her work on me, as a narcissist does. She had already made her appeal. So it is in that where I was starting to live in this life where I was not being supported, not being heard, not being listened to, being devalued in every opportunity. She would lie or create false truths. In fact, they became more and more affluent as time went on, to the point where she would deadpan to my face say that she's not doing something when I knew for a fact that she was, or when she was trying to hide things like potential romantic connections that she had even before I was in the picture. things like that. And eventually it got to the point where I was broke down to the point where I was severely depressed again. Now, understanding all of this, having gone through this before, I knew the symptoms, I knew the signs that I was about to fall into a potentially suicidal moment. And it's with that I realized that this relationship was no good. That she is a narcissistic abuser brought on by things that were completely out of my control, mind you. This was in the case of reactive abuse gone awry. She was clearly this way before, and it had all gone full circle multiple times. And at this point, I was at the point where I was nearly suicidal because of it. I fortunately had enough strength and fortitude. I prayed, and I just had to, foster my own strength along with some divine help and some help from others to get myself out of there, to say this situation is no good. I need you to leave. And it gets to the point where, of course, now when you're doing the discarding, when you're telling them to leave, of course, there's dramatics that happen with that. And I need to say that was my breaking point. That was the breaking point. There were other breaking points, but that was the one that did it to me. She had no interest in consoling me, had no interest in hearing me out unless she can use it as part of her armory against me. In fact, she has said that before, like, she needs, she expected me to be strong 100% of the time. Yeah. And why? Because that's what narcissists do. They want you to make up for them, and they need you to be in tip-top form all the time, all while breaking you down, which is what she did. The expert. And it got to the point where there was nothing that I can do that was going to be to make it right. And no matter how hard I tried, I knew that this was just no good. So I told her to leave. And that was a process. I'm not going to say that was easy. It wasn't as easy as just breaking away, but that was the point. And so that is my narcissistic abuse journey. And there's so much to fill in between that, but I use it to feel the, my experiences in the videos here. I share a lot of my experiences with these videos. So that being said, I hope you got something from this. I hope you get something from my channel. If you do, again, do the things that you need to do to help this algorithm go so that I can continue to help others. Be on the lookout for more things I'm going to provide. I don't like discussing on comments, but I will do emails and I will do forum chats. Just not, there's a lot of negativity in the world, and people like to really do that in the comment section of a YouTube video, so I try to stay away from that and moderate against that. But if you do have a concern, feel free to reach out to me via email, or you can put a comment, hey, how can I get hold of you? I'll be glad to discuss with you, chat with you about this. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I suggest that you get one if you're going through something similar. But make sure that you get yourself a good. In fact, I have another video on here that says, like what you should look for in a therapist. But the basic is make sure that you get somebody that is versed in narcissistic abuse and abusive behaviors, because if you just get any kind of therapist, like a marriage counselor or something like that, they might steer you towards like trying to make it right and do more damage than good. Anyway, get yourself a therapist. Don't substitute that, but don't substitute your therapy. It helps. And as I always say, be kind to others, be good to yourself, pray often, and know that your better days are always ahead. Thanks for watching. I'm Chaplain Dallas.